Okay, I'm going to call us to order at 6:01. Liz, can you give us a thumbs up if you can hear us fine? Okay, Zoom land is looking good. So let's start. We have 1 hour to try to accomplish a lot because we do have a 7 o'clock hearing in executive session. So let's start with where we are and the SU mission. Just want to read that to keep us all focused. Our SU mission is to provide a safe, inclusive, and supportive environment where all students grow academically, socially, and emotionally, and are challenged to reach their potential as local and global community members. So tonight I will try to keep us focused. Tonight is the beginning of 4 weeks of budgets. We will be together every Wednesday night. The work will be heavy. There will probably be a great deal of homework as well. So if we can all have a little patience with each other, that would be good. I will be asking a lot if what we're doing is the will of the board, because we do not operate as individuals, we operate as a team. So if we can keep that in mind as well. At this point, are there any nominations for a clerk of the board? I'd
like to nominate Tim.
Thank you, Liz. We have a nomination for Tim as the clerk. Tim has something to say.
I would like to nominate Liz.
Liz, do you have anything to say?
Well, I think Tim's closer to central office. So if anything needs to be signed, he can get there quickly. And he's an excellent minute taker.
Yeah.
You are.
Liz, would that indicate that you are declining the nomination?
I am. I definitely am. Thank you.
Is there a second for Tim?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Let me make an offer. I'm also happy to be scribe at times if you just need it.
Oh, that's very nice of you.
So,
Okay, if you go ahead and vote.
okay. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none. All those in favor of Tim Seal as clerk of the SU board, say aye.
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 Any nays or abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Okay, so we're going to do a roll call. Liz Adams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. Michelle Green, how do you vote?
I'll abstain. I'd like to share my reasons.
You may.
So per Vermont statute 16 VSA 554 regarding school boards, Robert's Rules of Order shall govern the conduct of school board meetings. And on October 12th, the seated chair determined to allow a vote to rescind the chair position pending legal interpretation of Robert's rules as to whether such a motion and vote was permissible. Legal counsel addressing this question has yet to be shared. For this reason, I am concerned that we are potentially practicing outside our legal confines and feel it is unethical to move forward with board reorganization without being accountable as public officials to ensure we are operating in accordance with the law.
Tim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Congratulations, Tim, and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Moving on to our consent agenda.
Good question.
Go ahead.
Does that mean I begin taking minutes?
It does if you don't mind.
Okay, fine.
Carrie does do a good job. She's been our scribe for a while.
I know.
Approval of minutes. Would someone like to move the minutes of November 9th?
So moved.
Michelle has moved the minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Kelly. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, we will move to vote on the minutes of November 9th. Although, why don't we do a roll call? Liz, how do you vote on the minutes of November 9th?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Kelly?
Yes.
Okay. We have warrants and payrolls as presented. We have the warrants of November 9th and the payroll of November 4th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Liz. We have a motion and a second to approve the warrants of November 9th and the payroll of November 4th. Is there any comments or questions? Seeing none, we will move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the warrants and payroll as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Okay, that moves us to the administrative report.
Okay, a few items tonight. First, I'll just give an update on the transportation negotiations with our bus drivers. If you have to read.
It's usually the speaker. Yeah,
Speakers off.
that's better.
Yeah, I think I got it all. I guess you have to do that every time.
Every time, then you have to remember to put your volume back up when you're actually the one who needs to talk.
No, that's okay. So if you remember, we had been given the date of December 1st as a potential day of a strike by the bus drivers if a deal had not been agreed upon. What we've learned today is that a deal has not been closed, so there's no deal in place. However, there will not be a strike tomorrow. And I've been assured by the lead negotiator that a strike necessarily in the future isn't off the table. But if that were to occur and a deal is not imminent, we'll be given fair notice to share contingency plans with the community. So that's where we are.
Mark, I just wanted to be clear, I had some educators reach out to me about things that could be done, and I expressed that they could independently reach out, and I know that started happening, but that's really the role, that's as much as we can do. We just have a contract and are completely separate from that. I just wanted to be clear about that in this meeting.
Yeah, we take no role in this negotiation.
Yeah.
Yep. School climate update. We have student climate surveys that we did this fall. We've been in contract with Chris Overtree. He has had initial meetings with all schools and teams at schools. So next steps for us is to schedule time with Chris at all of our schools, and he'll be working with our teams to unpack historical data and recent data. So that work is ongoing. And I'll give updates as we move forward. Tim?
Will Chris be meeting with the board to talk about what the plan is?
I think so. Yeah, Paul and I are going to try to Zoom with him before the end of the week to get a clear sense of the scope of the next steps. But it certainly would make sense for Chris to attend a board meeting and speak to the process and the work that he engaged in with our schools.
Yeah, I know I would appreciate it.
Great. Our new website is live. So feel free to check that out. It's much better organized. I would not say it's a job complete. We're still working on it, but it's at a point where we can kind of take over the management of that and the development of the different sites.
Is this a time where I could send something to at least SU board members saying, look it over and send me feedback, and then I compile it and send it to you?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Me and Paul, actually.
Okay.
Paul's been our
So
point.
I'll send you guys an email with, look around, give me feedback.
And Paul has been our point person on this website project and has done a really great job communicating with Rainstorm and collaborating with them.
It only takes you 2 clicks, or not even that, to get to,
Yeah, I like the way
Agendas,
the
it's
drop
like
downs work
boom.
and the floating menu.
nice.
Feel free, is there anything else you want to share about that
No, it's really,
process?
at this point, it's, we kind of think of it as just ongoing edits. As we need things, we can put them in there. I've had a chance to work with the WordPress backend, and it seems pretty straightforward. Touch wood.
I think there may be some pages, Paul, that are still reserved for content.
Yeah, so HR, I haven't got together with Stacy yet. We'll populate the HR page. There, you may see, people have been thinking it was Spanish. It's actually Latin. Lorem ipsum text.
It's
There-
Cicero, I believe.
Is it?
I think it's Cicero. That, I don't know where that came from, so I could be totally wrong, but something in my Latin came up with it Cicero.
But yeah, we'll now that we've got our hands on the wheel, we can dig in there and get stuff working.
But I know this board particularly was wanting a new website, so hopefully it meets your expectations as we move forward. And then lastly, just wanted to give an update on some curriculum work and professional development work of the school system. Presented this on Monday night at the Vernon board meeting, Carrie, so duplicate. Essentially, if you take a look at the slideshow, and I provided hard copies, and Paul helped me with this, but cover page is an example of curriculum and assessment and the diversity equity office reaching out to the school community with updates on work that is happening. If you remember back to the very beginning of the year, one of my goals was to have curriculum and assessment and diversity equity work more in line with each other. So I think this is a good example of that work happening right now. And they do have regular weekly meetings together. You do have remote access to this in the slideshow. On the first page, the teaching and assessment toolkit.
You want me to share it?
Sure.
You keep going and I'll.
We featured that at our last presentation around data. But that's just another opportunity for you to kind of surf around those research sources that have been developed over many years.
I will say further to that, a couple of pieces specifically with respect to the diversity and equity work. Our offices are now co-located down next to at the Paramount Building next to Marketplace. It used to be River Garden. And we do have weekly meetings. And one of the things that we're doing in the meeting that I'm personally finding fascinating, and I think is sort of helping to inform our work, there is a great podcast. It's part of, the podcast is Scene on Radio, SCENE. And these are a set of episodes from 2017 with some updates, more recent updates, that are about sort of investigating whiteness. It's fascinating stuff. The overall gist is the notion that race is entirely a social construct, no genetic basis whatsoever, despite a history of folks attempting to make some sort of genetic basis, and then sort of spinning out what are the implications of that as we look across the history of the US. It's really, really interesting stuff. And sort of part of the, I wanted to share that because it's kind of part of the background work that we do together as a group. That's, sort of helps move things along.
Awesome.
What is it? What is the podcast called?
Scene on Radio, SCENE on radio. It's ongoing. So if you find the podcast, you'll find the most recent episodes. You got to go back to, as I say, about 2017. And there are 10 episodes, I think, that are all on this sort of understanding whiteness.
Great.
Thanks.
So this next slide is how we organized our professional development days most recently. And just wanted to give you a sense of how we went about that, how we organized the work. But this work really came from our curriculum office and special ed office. But just wanted to give you a kind of a school system view of how we operate.
Mark, I'll jump in there. On that prior slide, IM Math is the illustrative math, the new K-6 mathematics curriculum that we're implementing. EL is expeditionary learning. That's the new K-6 literacy, English language arts program that we're piloting this year, next year. And these sessions were intended to really get teachers to dig into the lessons, understand the program, now that they've had a couple of months to work with it, ask questions, share best practice with each other, that sort of thing. And then we also organized a whole bunch, and I say we, it was actually Bryn and the coaches, organized, and Tate, the special education, organized a whole slew of other sessions for a variety of other stakeholder groups. Sometimes the PD days are all organized by site, and that's the principal has everybody and deals with the local stuff. In this case, these were district-wide PD days. Sorry.
No, that's great. I want you to do that. Next.
Sorry, I don't mean to ask so many questions, but is there time built into professional development for teachers simply to confer with other teachers?
Yes, it's sort of the conferring with other teachers. One place where that happens is when there is, for instance, the transition day between first and second semester. All teachers across the district, that is a professional development day for their purposes. Most often for finishing up one, if they have semester courses. Elementary teachers don't, but finishing up the semester, as it were, preparing for report cards. But there's also opportunity for lots of on-site collaboration. I will say that some of the collaboration also happens in these sessions whenever across the district grade levels get together, they talk with each other about best practice.
Okay, thanks.
Next slide, just an example of some opportunities that we're highlighting for staff to partake in. And these are upcoming next week, actually. And again, this is from Diversity Equity Office, Curriculum Office. Next slide, just a continuation of some information around report cards, new summative assessment at the end of the year. You can see some updates on Panorama.
I'm on the right slide.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good slide, yeah. And this is an example of how we go about identifying benchmark data to start the school year. And so these meetings occurred in October. And you can see the schedule, you can see the goal, how we went about going into those meetings. And essentially, this is our first formal opportunity to engage with teaching staff, with the curriculum office, to look at benchmark data and set goals for the winter. And then we'll do it again. And then we'll end with a benchmark meeting in the spring. Next slide. These are just some upcoming professional development opportunities and sessions around IM and EL, which Paul just talked about.
So this slide deck is sort of also an archive. We build on the slide deck over the course of the year. Again, not my idea, Bryn, the coaches, but the idea is we'll send out the link to the slideshow. The most recent slides will be at the top, but it's also an archive of all of the stuff that we've shared over the course of the year. It's kind of cool.
And then lastly, if you don't know where the hub is, we got a nice little visual here. If you want to come visit Paul and Bryn and the coaches and Michaela. So
And if this isn't already, we can get it on the website.
yes. I don't think it's on the website yet.
I'll put it up.
But we can.
Yeah, if you want to put it under
Sure.
our agenda or minutes.
But just
Sorry.
Just wanted to give an example of kind of system-wide work that we're doing and how we communicate our goals and how we work together. I think it's a good example.
Has this been is this how things have been, how you've been doing professional development, or has it been school specific? Or are there opportunities for the schools to do their own thing the way like some schools have, restorative practice and other ones are doing the
Developmental
developmental design, that kind of stuff. Do they, or is this the model that you're gonna be working with to do it more united with district-wide? Or are you figuring it out?
We always come up with this great plan for professional development for the following year, and we always have to change it.
Okay.
So it's a whole mixture of things. And part of that is just being flexible about what the needs are. So the 2 November days were originally intended to be site-based days.
Okay.
And we ran into so many issues with substitutes and so many problems with teachers being out during a regular day, that the implementation sessions for the math and ELA curricula that were scheduled on regular school days and, pull in K1 teachers and pull in 3-4 teachers just ended up being a real hardship. So the fallback was, okay, let's use those two, the majority, sort of for the majority of teachers, use those 2 November days as substitutes, not pull them out during the day, but get it all in on those 2 days. So what was going to be site-based works for all the elementary schools ended up not being, but BAMS was still able to do developmental designs and some assessment work on their days. And the high school did, I think they were doing trauma informed and something else on their 2 days. So it's really just a kind of a mixed bag. Imagine all of the stakeholder groups that we have in the district that, you got to make sure everybody's got somewhere to go on those days.
It's a really good question, Michelle, and it's kind of a balance that we try to keep in touch with as we move forward. But great opportunities for Tate to work with all special educators, which is not easy time to find.
It's hard to find, and we also got our board certified behavior analysts to meet with about 100 paraeducators and do some real hands-on training, which is really valuable. That's good.
That's it?
That's it.
All right, let us move on to public comment. So this is for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone from the public who would like to raise their hand? I'm looking in Zoom land. So second call for public comment. All right, we will move on to our favorite subject. Oh no, we're not there yet, sorry. VSBA training, so unfinished business, VSBA training. I think next steps, I'm gonna send out an email to you, just seeing feedback and what you think we need next. Let's continue moving on having more board training. Superintendent evaluation, I have got an email out to Sue Siglowski. We are looking at next Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. So again, we'll do an hour on budget, and then we will do an executive session at 7 o'clock for the VSBA to walk us through the evaluation, and then we can plan goals. Code of ethics, I'm gonna have to table that again. I did not get to that. Now we will move on to new business and turn things over to Frank. And Frank, you get 25 minutes.
I think that's sufficient.
All right, would you like me to share the screen?
That would be good.
We do have a resignation.
Oh, we do have a resignation? Okay, do we need, who's that?
I am honored to report that Sharon Johnson, who's been a teacher of the deaf and a special educator with us for the last 11 years, has submitted her resignation. She's retiring.
Is there a motion to accept with regret the retirement of Sharon Johnson?
And congratulations. I'll move that. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the retirement with regret and congratulations for Sharon Johnson. All those in favor, say aye. Oh, do you have a question?
Yeah, which school is she at?
She was at Academy, but she was our teacher of the deaf for the district. Yeah, very valuable and will be very missed.
All right,
And
all
when will-
those,
Sorry.
At the end of the school year.
At the end of the school year, okay.
all those in favor? Aye.
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 All right. Now, Frank, I will give you control. There you go.
All righty.
Hopefully I did that right.
I think you did.
Oh, can I add one more thing real quick? So tonight, we're gonna do one section of the budget. We're not making any votes. There's nothing being set in stone. Let me see if I can. So you're gonna get an overview from Frank. If you have any questions during the week, when you go back and look at it, send them to me. Again, I'll aggregate them and get them to Frank, and at our next meeting, he can answer them. So it's not until, I believe, the 21st. All right? Am I still sharing?
I think so.
Okay.
You're sharing.
I'd selected the, well, I don't share. It
Okay.
says I'm good, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah, so as you were just saying, Carrie, that's where I thought it would be good for us to start. So here's the calendar that's been out now for a couple of months. And just super briefly, here we are today in the SU budget planning timeline. And today we're scheduled to talk about administrative budget, the supportive instruction, and then the grants. So I emailed those documents out the other day, and we'll go over them today. Next week, we're scheduled to review the special education proposal and the allocation methods. And, it's primarily supervisory union responsibility to agree on a methodology, and we've done that maybe 4 years ago, and I think it's been a stable methodology, very straightforward, basically just proportion of enrollment. And then on the 14th, the food service program and the revenues review, and if we need a fourth meeting, we have the 21st scheduled as well. Typically, we would have the SU budget approved by the board in December. So as we move forward with Vernon District and the Windham Southeast District, we have those assumptions for special education and supportive instruction administration behind us. So that is the timeline. Any questions, comments?
Could you say a little more about what education and allocation methods involves?
Yeah, so the supervisory union doesn't tax, and they have to take all of the program costs, whatever is offset by grants and other sources of revenue, have to be assessed to the districts. So the allocation methodology is basically taking proportional enrollment and applying it to the amount of the budget to be assessed to the districts. And it's a written methodology that was approved by the board several years ago and has been utilized since. It's also essentially the default Vermont statute as well. The Vermont statute basically says you'll use proportional enrollment as a default unless you agree otherwise. So we are basically following the standard statute. Okay, the second document I wanted to share, I know Mark has already, I think, done a review, so I won't spend much time on it other than just as an orientation. So much of what Paul coordinates as consolidated program, federal program coordinator, and then very much our lead person in the interface with the agency of ed for the millions of dollars of ESSER fund. These questions are very much still front and center in terms of driving the budget resources, the assumptions, focus on student achievement, particularly those who have had the greatest loss of proficiency associated with the pandemic. Question 2 is focusing on diversity and equity and supporting social emotional learning. And then you just heard about the professional development plan and how thoughtful that process is. Then we have those engagement activities that we know really help students. That's all part of what you're going to see in this proposal. Question 5 is very much oriented toward our special education services. It gets into our systems, but of course it's across all of our programs. So we'll talk more about the question 5 implications in this budget. And then question 6, not so much an SU question. It's raising the issue about safe and healthy buildings, learning environments, and of course, that's very much at the district level with our capital plans. But that's a very quick overview of key assumptions that are in front of all of our educational leaders as we develop our plans. The second page of this document is just alerting us that legislature has continued to change the funding formula that impacts the way we develop tax rates. Probably the most significant thing for this board and this budget cycle is the change in special education funding. It continues to evolve from a percent reimbursement basis to a census basis, but they made a modification in this fiscal year 23 that said, well, we might have rushed that legislation, so let's look at a couple of scenarios and we'll give you the most favorable scenario. So we'll be looking at that soon. Fortunately, most of our other revenue assumptions are not substantially changed from recent legislation. So a little bit about process and about focus, all very much student driven. So let's jump into the budget proposal. What I'll do is I'll review documents sent to you previously, and they're on our website. This is the administration and supportive instruction, and then our grant programs. I think Paul will probably describe most of our grant programs, so I will start with a brief summary of what you're looking at, and then turn it over to Paul and certainly ask questions as you see. Okay, so I've got here on the screen first page of the admin and instruction proposal. Note that I have not developed revenue assumptions yet. I really need the ADM. That data has just been uploaded to the Agency of Ed, and we wait for the agency to return it back to us after it's been vetted through their screen, and then I use that data for those allocations. So I need that before I can develop revenue. The first program that you see, and knowing that we have a half hour, we'll get through all of these, but I won't dwell too much on one in particular, but I'm sure that you'll have questions, and certainly we can come back to them in successive meetings. So curriculum and assessment, that is our research and development brain trust for educational leadership here. This is the first proposal you see on page 1. This is our Paul Smith and Bryn Tucker, and this is the local share of the administrative proposal. So there is also a portion of leadership in the grants that you'll see as well. That is a traditional allocation of the resources that goes through the Agency of Education's process. So you see no real significant change. I'll say in general, we mirror the average settlement of the collective bargaining agreements for our non-union folks, which is most of our admin. And that average increase, 6.5% for fiscal year 23 and 5% for fiscal year 24. So those assumptions are included in here. Health insurance, the great state of Vermont health commissioners are responsible for that negotiations. They have settled that contract, and the Beehive, the insurer, has requested a 12.7% increase in premiums. So that's in here. So that's a curriculum assessment. I think as Paul reviews the grant programs, you'll see how many threads there are through various initiatives, educational initiatives that are managed by that office. Technology is our next group here on page 2. So this is Gary Parzich, a longtime, very expert employee. The only significant change here is on the bottom of the group there, which goes on to page 3. And that is, you may recall hearing us talk about our insurer, our cybersecurity insurer actually dropped us and said, you know, the school business is becoming really difficult to insure. And they said, thanks, but no thanks. So we had to go out and rebid that. As part of that process, the industry, and this is across the country, this is nothing unique to us. The industry has very stringent requirements that that we demonstrate we have in place. One of those requirements is approximately a $40,000 monitoring system for email phishing, for any kind of a fraud attempt on our networks. It also requires multi-factor authentication, as most of us are doing now, with a personal, banking or anything. So anyways, this is a very significant increase, but you see that where we were at a $30,000 line item there, that's now to a $60,000 line, and that's what accounts for that increase. Moving right along, our next group of expenses here in this proposal is the Diversity Equity Office on page 3. So Michaela Sims has been coordinating these resources. Notice there is a significant increase there as well, but let me help you understand that this is the year we've been talking about consolidating 2 budgets, one at the SD and then another here at the SU. We've been talking about consolidating that for 2-3 years because it's just cumbersome for Michaela and anyone to administer the program out of multiple buckets. So there's an equivalent reduction in the SD. So from a assessment point of view, there is no impact associated with that increase. Or if you looked at a couple of line items, you see the second line item in that group, diversity equity stipends, goes from 0 to 50,000. Well, the current budget is 50,000 in the SD, and that's going to 0. So it's a wash. Moving right along, our next group is the last line on the page 3 is the board, the SU board. Now, most of the expense for board governance is in the districts, right? It's in the Vernon district, it's in the SD, but this is a budget for supplies for the board associated with SU business. Next program is the superintendent's office. We don't have any significant changes in this proposal, other than at the bottom on page 5. Not page 5. I'm looking for, we do have a significant increase. There it is. It is on page 4. Under data processing services, so in the superintendent office, this is where the Tyler Technologies system contract has been for many years. Tyler Technology is what runs our HR, our payroll, our accounts payable, our financial statements, our accounting, our general ledger. This has been a terrific vendor for us for many, many years. Before the state initiated this statewide financing system, 85% of the state was with Tyler Technology. They're a major national company. They're moving to the cloud. Because of the security issues that I also just talked about, they're supporting clients through the cloud like so many businesses have done. And that comes with a higher cost. So that's what that line item reflects. Other than that, superintendent's office, you can see on page 5 is up a little more than that 6.5% or so, but it's not significantly different. Just a couple more groups here in the admin. Okay, so we're on page 5. The business group is at the lower section on page 5. So this is human resources, benefits. I just mentioned, payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, accounting, and so on. This is of course, I work very closely with this group, and I can't say enough about their commitment to the district, how hard they work, and how professional and competent they are. You see on the second line down, HR director, benefits coordinator, up. That line item is up quite a bit for fiscal year 24. That's a request for an additional HR position. We're not too much smaller than Burlington because we're several communities. Burlington is just the city of Burlington. Stacy's here with us. I think they have 7 folks in the HR department, and they're, as I said, not substantially different. We have 2, and our 2 folks, are running as hard as you can run. But there's been a lot of additional responsibility, particularly over the course of the pandemic, but even before that. The Affordable Care Act brought in a tremendous amount of data processing that's required, and it's still required. That didn't go away. We've gone from 30 new hires typically in every year to over 100. And it appears that trend is going to continue. So there's been a very obvious need for additional support. What we expect is that support will provide time for our director, our HR director, to look far and wide on the recruiting initiatives. We know how important recruiting is, particularly also with our interest in a diverse workforce, and also evaluation systems. Evaluation systems obviously are so important in terms of making sure our staff get the feedback they need for continuous improvement. So those things are a real struggle to commit to at the director level when we have so much of a volume going through the office, and we're still nearly 700 employees. So that's a significant workload.
So which line is that, assistant?
So if you look on page 5, and then you see that lower group, that it's the function codes 2510. The first line in that group is business administrator. It's the second line. The second line says HR director and benefits coordinator. That proposal you see is up more than a typical increase, and that reflects an additional position, an HR support position.
Ask a quick question.
Sure.
You said that health insurance is going up 12%. Why is it 26.43%?
A new position brings in a new plan, and each plan is a two-person plan now is $17,000 for the employer.
Oh, right,
Yeah, so you got to add that cost.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so another significant increase to this budget, which I think is a very good investment, but it's hard to see all of these increases in the SU. It's unusual, but it's Act 72. You may recall legislature 2 years ago required all supervisory unions to employ a facility director for all schools. Fortunately, Robert Clerk applied for that position, and he was the former Brattleboro Union High School facility manager. We funded that position in ESSER this year. That's why you see no money there in that budget proposal. But you know, the ESSER funds are running out, as you know, and we're required to make the commitment. I do think that this position pays for itself. Robert Clerk is very highly qualified, and he knows the technical level of systems, and he can bring in oftentimes our own licensed electricians and our highly trained mechanics to address HVAC problems. I problem solve with him routinely. Vendors will charge us $1,000 a day for an HVAC contract, and Robert is able to accomplish a great deal of that work. And that's just one example. There's many, many other examples. Just a couple more items. You see bottom of page 6, the transportation contract, that's up for bid. So that's simply a placeholder. For the last 5 years, we've had a bid price that I've been able to plug in, and with a high degree of confidence, we've hit those numbers. I've put in this nearly 6% increase, and we'll just have to see how that develops. And then finally, our last program in this group is our English language learner proposal. So they used to be called ESL, and now it's
ESL, the SOL,
yeah.
now it's ML, multiple languages.
Yes. So one more program. Now I'm sure you've heard about the resettlement and the impact it has on our schools, and it's been a so far so good program, but it's requiring 2 additional teachers in addition to our current budget. Now, we've actually hired them this year because we needed them. That variance will come out of fund balance, but this program basically, this proposal basically sustains the staff that we've had to hire to meet the student need. So that's the admin and support of instruction proposal, up significantly, but I do hope to see some offsets, as I mentioned, but certainly there's no offset to the brunt of this increase. Much of it is legislatively required and enrollment out of our control, in terms of the resettlement. So if I could turn it over to Paul for our last 10 minutes of an overview. The last thing I'll say is I'll just scroll down to the last page of this budget document for the grants. Now, of course, all of these programs are paid for by somebody else, or indirectly by us through our federal taxes, right? But it's here I am on the last page of this document from a grant. The printed document says page 22. We are going from 9.6 million down to 6.1 million. And it should be no surprise to you that this is the beginning of the phase out of ESSER. but we still have the very strong and important Title I programs, Title II, Title IV, and so on. So, Paul, if you want me to scroll along, I'm happy to do that, but I'll turn it over to you for just a general overview of maybe the more significant programs that we are operating.
Sure, I believe the first page is sort of summaries of each of the revenue side of each of the grants. You can see some of them are relatively small, some of them are relatively large. Nearly $1.5 million for Title I. 200, the consolidated federal program, CFP grants that you might hear folks talk about, me talk about anyway, is Title I, Title II, that's on page 2, and Title IV. Those are the standard grants. And then you'll see that in, say, starting with ESSER 1, ESSER 2 at the bottom of page 1, ESSER 3 at the top of page 2, ARP ESSER Homeless. Those are grants that FEMA that are related to the pandemic. And those are the grants that are over time going to be going away, actually fairly soon going to be going away. So that's revenue side. And then a whole slew of other grants. We yearly get a tobacco grant as part of the tobacco settlement with the tobacco companies from way back. That's the work that we do in collaboration with the Brattleboro, used to be Brattleboro Area Prevention Coalition, is now Building a Positive Community. Lots of great collaboration there on prevention work. And then you can see a whole slew, as I say, of other smaller grants. The Afghan Refugees Support School Impact on bottom of page 4. And then, let's see, what's the next? And then expenditures starting on page 5, right, Frank?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Including the sub-grants that we send, for instance, most of the Title I money that we bring in, most of that nearly 1.5 million goes back out to individual schools. There are Title I schools that are in the district, and those are almost exclusively used for academic support teachers. So direct support to students. And you can see that in Title I on pages 5 and 6. There's some administrative costs for my salary that come out of Title I, that's the middle of page 6. The school-wide subgrants, you'll see at the bottom of page 6, about $1 million. And then Title IV on page 7. Most of Title IV is some support for the other curriculum coordinator and some additional support for a science, district-wide science coach, Ben Lord, former science teacher at the high school, who's doing a great job working with the elementary and middle school supporting science implementation. And you can see that there are some reductions there because we're going to move his funding. There's some, I guess, additions in Title IV. Let me make sure that that's right.
Yeah, overall, we're pretty close. If you look at the total of the program, we're pretty close. That's on page 8. Page 8, and just a $740 difference, but there are some shifts in the way it was allocated.
And then a number of the other grants are proposed at $0 because we have expended all of those grant funds, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, or most of ESSER 2. You can see, so in pages 8, 9, 10, top of 11, and then you'll see ESSER 3 details starting on bottom of page 11 into 12, etc. We've been able to do some reductions, as I say, moving Ben Lord from ESSER 3 into Title 4, but we are still keeping some of the folks in ESSER 3 for the final year of ESSER, mostly because the effect that they're having is sort of, it's working for us, and the need is still absolutely there. We see from our assessment results, say from spring SBAC or the benchmark assessments that we did this fall, learning loss is, as I said last night at the SD board meeting, learning loss is still apparent, or call it unfinished learning. The levels of engagement are still not where we want them to be. So providing instructional coaching at the district level is important. Transfers to ESSER funding for instructional coaches, social workers in the schools. Does that shows up here, right?
It would be in the sub-grant.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And if I could clarify one quick
Oh, yeah,
thing.
there is.
On page 11, I just noticed the first line that Paul was referring to, that is ESSER 3, the description is so large, like it says subgrant to Vernon Esser, and it's cut off the ESSER 3. It's got two things there. I will abbreviate that, but know that on the bottom of page 3 where it says subgrant to Vernon, that's the beginning of ESSER 3 planning, which, for example, is saying this year we're subgranting $509,000 to Vernon, and next year 300,000, and that's ESSER 3. But ESSER 3 does run out. This is the last allocation of ESSER funding. There's no ESSER funding available for FY25.
2 more minutes.
So I'll leave those open for questions. How,
And again, this is a do your homework and send me questions, and we do it again. We do it as many times as we need to.
I think page, a lot of folks are interested in the ESSER funding.
Yeah.
And I just so you know, in your homework, page 11 is ESSER 3 and a very detailed plan, okay, that has all gone through the Agency of Education. Page 12, page 13, page 14, and page 15. All of those are ESSER 3, and on page 15, you see the total. It says AOE, and that says ESSER 3 with a code. So this year, $5,867,000 in ESSER spending. That's been approved, and we're moving forward with that. Next year, $3,120,000, and that's it. There's no more money. So if you have a particular interest in it, it's pages 11 through 15 gives you the details.
All right, well, as always, thank you. And we have many more of these, so read them over and then start getting your reading glasses. At this point, I would entertain a motion to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or a person involved at a substantial disadvantage. Is there a motion? Thank you. Kelly, is there a second?
Ken, can you just explain why?
Sure, it's on our agenda. So this is the grievance hearing we're going into.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a second from Michelle. And I keep changing. Is there a motion to enter executive session under VSA 313A1D grievance and invite in representatives of the administration and the union?
So moved.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kelly. So we have a motion and a second on the table to enter executive session under 313A1D grievance. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are in executive session as of 6:59. We will be moving downstairs to room 194. I do not expect there to be anything when we come back.